New Zealand have just beaten South Africa 24-17. An absolute treat we've had this morning between New Zealand and South Africa at Eden Park. Of course, before that, we had Argentina versus Australia. Australia winning that at the death. We'll touch on that. But to start with, we've got to talk about this game. I thought New Zealand were terrific in the way they went about their business. South Africa, big opportunity for them to go to Eden Park. And yeah, I think they'll probably come off going, they didn't get the first sort of 30, 40 minutes right. But you almost felt at the end, New Zealand was sort of holding on. Cracking game, Coley.
I thought New Zealand were outstanding today. Fair play to them. That first 20 minutes, I think they came out, their ability, they seemed to be prepped for everything Springboks threw at them, like that midfield, sort of line out maul, the Springboks setup. You saw the Kiwis almost like ignored the sort of jumping pod and went straight on the sides, four on the sides, the maul defence, the breakdown. I thought New Zealand were brilliant in their second try where they go over the top of the line out, ball back inside to Will Jordan who runs through. Like, I thought, fair play to the New Zealand coaches. I thought they were so well drilled and coached for them. They were sort of prepared for everything Springboks had, were able to build a lead, and then sort of second half defended like their lives depended on it, and came away with the results. I know it was a fantastic result for them, and so it really keeps the championship like we would not have suspected the table would look like this at halfway, would we?
Coley, I've got to say, I thought the way that New Zealand were, the intensity they brought and the accuracy they brought tonight was the New Zealand that we often sort of think about or have played against. Or when you picture, New Zealand teams being on in form and on song, it was literally like that, like so clinical with their strikes, but equally so efficient at breakdown and things like that, and just the basics of the game done incredibly well because the conditions were difficult. It was wet, it was like poured it down at one point, then it drizzled, then it kind of looked like it dried up. But I thought New Zealand still managed to sort of move the ball and try things and tip. But their breakdown work, I was really impressed with. I did pick up, Coley, South Africa obviously going to that box kick game, but New Zealand were really targeting that ruck, and they targeted that platform. So when a nine's kicking, he wants, a couple of guys in there, being nice and strong at the front of that ruck, and then a couple of other guys in behind. Often those are locks to make the ruck nice and long to give yourself plenty of time to then execute a kick, especially in those conditions. But New Zealand was sort of putting 3 or 4 bodies in there, almost trying to lift the first 2 guys that were at the front of that ruck, almost lift them up, and then 3 or 4 would then sort of fly in and almost try and bend them back over the top of the ruck. I haven't seen a team sort of go after a sort of box kicking ruck like New Zealand did tonight. It was like sort of really specific in terms of tactical, what they were trying to do and what they're trying to execute. And, they certainly went after that. And then both sides of the ball, the breakdown stuff, as you'd expect from New Zealand, like incredibly ferocious, like low to the ground, getting rid of threats, defensively unreal, which kind of leads us on to Ardie Savea, really. What a performance on his 100th cap and that jackal at the end.
I actually thought, in honesty, he had probably get ribbed for this, but he was a fairly quiet game. But in big moments, when you're on your goal line in the 79th minute of the game, he turns up and gets his textbook turnover. And I mean, in those situations, momentum's with the Springboks, even like before, there are times on the field when you've played those games and you think everything's you've done really well. This final sort of couple of minutes of the game, 7 points, they've got to score a try and everything's going against you. There's a bit where the lead up to that play, I think the Kiwis are defending, like this couple of times the Springboks, the ball goes loose, but then it goes straight to the Springbok hands, they pick it up, they're back on the attack. Like, it's just those bits of the game. Sometimes you think this is going against us, this is all going against us. Like, we're doing really well, we're making our shots, we're hitting them back, but the ball's bobbling loose and someone else picks it up and we're back on defending. And even that, the line out beforehand, where Polly carries the ball, gets stripped, and then plays the ball. The referee sort of penalises the Kiwi, and he's like, I've stripped it, and then they check it back on TMO, and you're like, oh, we're going to get this back. And then it's like, oh, it's a high shot, and you're just kind of like, it's all going against you, the momentum's going against you. And in those moments, I think you're on the goal line, aren't you? Sort of thinking, you just need one play. But at the same time, it's rare. You get in those situations where sometimes you think we need one play, but then it's, I know what I'll do. I'll jackal the ball. Oh no, I've been penalised. I've made it even worse. I'm in the sin bin. You know what I mean? It takes a special kind of player that it takes a lot of guys to go, I'm just do my job. I'm an axe, tackle, roll. I'm not a jackler, so therefore I ain't jackling the ball. I'm just going to axe and roll. And then you get people like special players like Ardie Savea who go, this is my moment. I've got literally I can see the ball. I'll jackal it. I have the athletic ability to get down low and stay there. And 2 blokes clearing me out full whack. I can stay on the ball. And also, it helps being Ardie Savea because the ref can go, oh, it's Ardie Savea on the ball. He knows what he's doing. Here's a penalty. So, and I say, you saw the relief on the not the relief, but the sheer elation on the New Zealand, the All Blacks team, and the fact that sort of they knew what that meant. Must admit, I was a little bit panicked by the fact they then took the penalty about 10 seconds later. I was like, you're on your goal line, 79 minutes. Just drain the clock a bit. And you're like, literally 20 seconds later, you just banged it off the field. I was like, you're giving them a line out. Line out's been a bit flaky, lads. Maybe hold up a few minutes and then South Africa turn the ball over. And even at that point, you're probably thinking, oh, Christ. Like, you know what I mean? It's just against us. And a fair play to the Kiwis had one sniff at the breakdown. Like you said earlier with the sort of the box kicking rucks, they lifted them up and piled it in. There was one chance for sort of the ball bobbled loose. And I reckon all of New Zealand was in that breakdown. Counter-rucking. Yeah. To get the ball back and win the game.
That ball was not coming out South Africa's side, was it? Once they committed to counter-rucking, there was about 4 or 5 that flew over the top. I think when like moments like that, and you say, Coley, like the elation of almost knowing like that was the game, you know, with Ardie Savea, you're right. Everyone at that point, you know, when you almost know you've got to win it tough, and right at the end, you're going to have to come up with something. But the patience, the trust within the system, and then all you're doing is relying on guys like Ardie Savea, the great jackalers of the world, to just wait for the perfect opportunity to get in there. And then once they've got a solid base on that ball, like you are literally reminding the ref that player might be holding on. But it's just I think that's what the best jackalers in the world call it. They're so quick to get in there. They only need half a gap to get in there, get in that strong position. And it's very, very hard to shift them, but they're also very patient. You know, they might make 3 chop tackles in a row before they then actually jackal. So it's all about timing. It's all about waiting for that little gap that they can find and get in there. And he certainly did that. Ardie Savea's obviously got his 100th cap tonight, Coley. And when you think of the great back rowers that New Zealand produced, it's almost cruel on other teams how many they just come off the treadmill of great back rowers. But where do you reckon Ardie Savea would rank in terms of All Blacks sort of great back rowers? When you start thinking of the Kieran Reeds, the Zinzan Brooks, the Richie McCaws, the Jerome Kinos, like guys like that, he's got to be in amongst it. I'd love to know, like, comment below where you think you'd put Ardie Savea, because he's such a sort of different. He can do all the bits in terms of the jackal stuff, in terms of the carry stuff. But then there was a time actually when Cheslin Colby had the ball on the outside, and Ardie Savea is literally staying with him pace for pace, mate, and Cheslin ends up sort of going into touch and sort of slinging the ball in field. But phenomenal athlete, and I'd love to know what sort of New Zealanders' opinion is in terms of where they rank him in terms of All Blacks great back rowers. He's got to be in the mix with some of those guys.
You look at McCaw, Reed, Jerome Kino, all guys that sort of the generation of players that we sort of grew up with and played against. And then you look at sort of Savea is definitely in that. Maybe he doesn't have the 2 World Cup wins that some of them do, but like in terms of his effect on the game, and he could easily have played in those World Cup winning sides and been one of the best players. He's been one of the best players in New Zealand for 100 games now. He's incredible. That he carries the ball. He's not the biggest man in the world. That's the sort of surprising thing when you see his effect on the breakdown and his carries and how powerful he is. You actually look at sort of his physical, like how much he weighs and stuff. He's not 120 kilos, but he plays so much bigger than his size. He's been durable, and his ability, his athletic, just how powerful he is. It's incredible. I think New Zealand are blessed in that department. And so you've got other guys coming through now, like Satiti. I thought was fantastic. They went off at 45 minutes, but he's been fantastic on the scene. He just sort of epitomises like how good, let's say, the conveyor belt of New Zealand back rowers that just are so good at every part of the game in regards. They've got no real weaknesses. Like they can defend, they can clear breakdowns, they can carry, but he's got the X factor of the jackal and say his power.
There's been obviously a lot of chat around like Henry Pollock and what he brings sort of around the pitch. Well, like almost Ardie Savea can bring all those bits, but more of a carry and more of like a powerful game than Pollock. But then also brings all like the breakdown threat, the jackal threat, and all like the sort of like the, I don't want to say the tough stuff because I'm not just like, but as in like, if it's pissing down the rain, Coley, he's happy to like mix it all in the breakdown, be a nuisance, be in again. You know what I mean? It's sort of, but yet he can bring all those X factor bits.
If you think of the back rowers, like, is that you got the Pollock, which is the X factor, the line breaks and stuff. That's what Savea could do. You think of like the jackal and the people that can turn a ball over like your Curries. Savea can do that as well. And you think of like the powerful running into brick walls, almost like, not so much the Jasper Visa style of things, but like the ability to almost like sit the first blow down with a carry and then bounce off and carry on running. He does that. And you just say, he does everything. And that's to say, he's a complete back row, maybe apart from line out. But like I say, he does everything, and like all the best, you compare the best line breaks in the world, best breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. He's got to be in the top 5 of all those categories, and there aren't many players in the world that can do that.
For me, he's the absolute complete back rower. I think he's phenomenal, and many congratulations on his 100th caps. I want to talk about just like where New Zealand are at, Coley, because obviously, Razor's now come in charge, but they looked incredibly well drilled. You saw like what he did at Crusaders. He came into New Zealand. It maybe everyone wanted to click straight away, and maybe it didn't necessarily click fully straight away, but I just thought some of their nous today was very impressive. Like that first try, hitting Bodie Barrett, just dropping under, one runner underneath, just open up that space so he's on a nice 45 angle to execute that crossfield kick, knowing that South Africa defend like they do, which is up and in. It isolates Cheslin Colby on that side and Villy LaRue. So as the kick comes over, it's 1-on-1 with LaRue. He sort of skittles under him, and then away he goes, and a great finish, and actually a good little pump and dummy, because actually Colby, I think, gets back and goes for the intercept there. So, but just clever, like the way that they just simple, because, drops the runner under just to open up that 45-degree angle to make the kick more easier. They know they're up and in, and it's just well executed, and exactly the same for the second try, because you say, Coley, like, with that line out with the ball back inside to Will Jordan, like it looks simple, but that is, you've got to rely on timing. You can't give away the triggers too early in terms of your line out movement. Like if he breaks away, Satiti breaks away too early from the line out, like the guys at the back of line out for South Africa pick that movement up really, really early. They can see that. So everything plays a small little part to isolate. I think it was Malcolm Marks at the back of line out there to isolate him, to give Will Jordan a 1-on-1 just on the outside shoulder of him. And that timing is just absolute key. And I just thought New Zealand looked really, really well drilled tonight. I thought they looked very, very impressive, and sort of everything you'd expect them to be. I was impressed.
They can obviously play and throw the ball around. I think there's a part in the first half where they scored early, and then they were playing a lot inside their own half and playing to edges, playing out wide. And they weren't really going anywhere. And I thought, are New Zealand going to overplay in their own half? And similarly, there was a couple of times they sort of playing to midfield to sort of kick off, and the ball's bouncing around, but they literally sort of shut that down and went sort of box kick, and as you say, targeted the Springboks box kick, but they've obviously worked a lot on their own because they were getting the guys in the air. There was no sort of clean catches. The Kiwis getting the ball back, so they just looked, as you said, incredibly well drilled, especially that first half. And we always know New Zealand can play, but it's almost like they're reining in their game. It's almost like they sort of go in some regards, where South Africa said they've expanded their game. New Zealand's obviously, I think, can play the expansive game, but it's sort of reining in its game and playing tight. And I've also said they've got a great forward pack. I think today you saw the more complete package of what they can do, especially in the gale but especially in the rain that came in today. They should have shut it down and played in the right periods of the field.
I just want to talk about, Coley, the set piece battle. You saw South Africa scrum back end of the second half, and the power that they brought on. In the first half, it looked pretty even both sides. So just take us into that set piece battle, and equally, it then ties into the line out and what we saw, how that unfolded.
South Africa's line out defence, if you go 7-man against them, or even 6, they've kind of always got two big athletic locks, whoever they pick. Etzebeth gets in the air really well. And then Will's got Pete Sefton in the back row. So their best 3 is often better than your 3. And so you kind of shorten the lineouts down, and you go to 4 5-man lineouts, which hopefully means that they have 2 props in there and only 2 guys that can jump. And as you saw today, they can still disrupt. Especially with the Kiwis. You could see Kiwis calling the line, which I think sometimes the hooker, especially when Cody Taylor went off. I think Cody Taylor was, you can see how important he is to the All Blacks set piece. Even like the scrum, I think he sort of is the glue that holds it together. And I think, in the second half, I'll go on a little Cody Taylor Cody Taylor importance. You saw that scrum where sort of New Zealand got pushed off their own ball, South Africa ended up scoring off. I think, Tamati Williams and Tyrell Lomax, I think, are 2 of the best props in the world. And for that to happen to them, you're kind of like, geez. And I think some of that is, I'm not blaming the hooker at all, but Cody Taylor in the first half, you saw his importance to the team. And I think him going off, especially the line out and everything like that, he's a great player and shows how quality he is. But the Kiwis sort of calling the line out sometimes. The hooker has to hear it. Eden Park's very loud. You can struggle. But you saw they're trying to pull the extremities of the line outs apart. So a lot of times New Zealand either hit the man at the front or going right to the tail over the 15 to try and beat the Springboks of pace, because hopefully they're reacting to you so you can get in the air before they can. The problem is the Springboks, their guys are about 7 foot tall and they've got really, really long arms. So even if they get half a lift, that ball has to be spot on in regards to, you think against a normal trajectory, you can just sort of throw it flat or throw it to the tail and you'll be all right. But actually the Springboks have the ability to get half a lift and disrupt the ball. And you saw that today. And I think credit to New Zealand as well, they got stuck into the Springboks ball. Barrett was able to get in the air, and I think Vi, the other second row, I think he was outstanding, especially in the first half. But you see him moving around and getting people in the air and defending the line-out. So I think the set piece battle was a really fascinating part of the game and reflected in the score.
I think from an attack point of view as well, though, Colty, so obviously that's the set piece bits, but I felt like South Africa just were missing that sort of cutting edge. They couldn't really put anything together first half. Like you said, they tried the same move they did against Italy, of course, with the hitting the midfield up, Delandy coming back, that line-out formation sort of in open play. That got dealt with. They then had another line out, another opportunity. Then New Zealand did a great way defending it. Sort of got up the side, that collapsed, turnover ball. They had one where a line out again off the tail ball. They sort of went past the 15. Ardie Savea got into that passing lane between the jumping pod of that line out and delivering it to Grant Williams. So they really sort of they didn't quite get their flow. And then on the back of not getting flow, they sort of became a little bit one-out runners. And then they'd often go to a kick. Pollard, obviously, Polly putting it up airily. But, Damian McKenzie dealing with that. So I just felt like the beauty is we get to see these teams go out again next week. New Zealand were incredibly efficient in that first half. South Africa weren't as efficient as we'd expect or they would want to be, for sure. So it's great that you kind of, let's see how it unfolds next week, because there's definitely, the back end of the game, you'd say South Africa were finishing the stronger. Like they were coming on top. They were, winning the set piece battle. They were starting to win collisions, get some speed of ball, move the ball around a little bit more. So it'll be very, very interesting to see, how the game shapes up next week. But, the Boks, I felt like just gave themselves too much to do with that, with the way that they started the game.
You look at New Zealand, credit to them. I think they played box kicked, they kicked smart, they made South Africa sort of run out their own half. And I thought South Africa, the way back into the game was their set piece power, especially with about 34, 35 minutes. They got sort of scrum penalty inside their own half. They then kicked halfway, got a maul. I think actually the Kiwis are right stopping them all, but they're offside trying to charge the kick down. So then South Africa then put it in the Kiwi 22, and South Africa basically went 70 metres up the field in 2 plays, and you're kind of like, this is South Africa's route back into the game. Then they have the line out, they sort of play off the top, and the 9 drops the ball. And it was just, that's the kind of like little bits of inaccuracies that are in South Africa's game, which you sort of, on a different day, they catch them and they're piling into your 22, piling into your goal line score. And similarly in that second half, there was a couple of crossing. I think they put off a line out, they're sort of carrying the ball, 3 and 4 of them come around the corner, the crossing, and it just stuttered. And we've sort of seen that bit from South Africa. And I think that's probably because they're just trying to keep advancing how they play. But you sort of see the clinical nature of New Zealand, like, their third try, they pound the line, no Quagga Smith basically goes into the sin bin. But New Zealand, they stop them all, they pound the line, New Zealand are sort of picking and going. Literally the one time they pull it wide, the replacement back just goes straight into the post, runs a hard line, skips inside, scores on the post, and you're kind of like, and similar with the second try, when they go over the back of the line out, play back inside, you really mentioned it, but just those clinical nature of New Zealand's, 3 of their tries, they all sort of came around, well, apart from the goal line one, 2 of them came from outside the 22, but they just a clean through. And I think that clinical nature, whereas like South Africa just either knocked the ball on or just stuttered in those parts of field. And that was ultimately the difference.
If they can bring New Zealand, they'll want a better start next week, but if they can bring them into that power game, certainly back end of the game, then I think that's a big point of difference to them. You look at Quagga Smith and his impact once again. Of course, he got yellow carded. People will see that part of the game, but don't forget all the impacts he did have as well, around the collision areas, around the carry areas. Ryanak as well, mate, 35 years old, like representing, still a running threat, like still an absolute running threat. And actually Grant Williams is a wonderful running threat. You saw in the first half, he got half a gap, literally only half a gap, breezed through, got tackled. But it just shows that you've got some running threat. And I think what helps, from a nines point of view, when you are getting out around the ruck and you're challenging, the beauty of playing for a team like South Africa is, and actually New Zealand, is you've got so many like running threats. You know, you look at the how dynamic the New Zealand back row is and some of their ball carriers they have within their pack. Like when you run out, you know, defenders are naturally looking at those guys. They're looking at your Wallaces, your Ardie Saveas, which gives you half a gap. Now, from the South Coast point of view, you know, Ryan Ack and Grant Williams, you're getting out. You're a running threat yourself, but equally you've got Dutoy coming. You know, you've got Quagga Smith coming. You've got Etzebeth running. You've got Malcolm Marks coming. Like all these big runners. Like the Ox, like these guys you genuinely have to look at and think, right, he might give him the ball. And it just gives you half an eye where you don't think about the 9. And all you're trying to do is run inside shoulders that defender. Run inside shoulders that defender. And hopefully he looks a little bit lateral or eyes up a big runner coming down his channel and you just beat him into that space. So yeah, I thought, Ryan Ack, just seen him do it so many times. But I think it's on the back of both teams having such great dynamic ball carriers that ultimately it allows you to have room as a 9 to do your thing.
Well, you see that Ryan Ack try. I think there's a Kiwi defender who's on the other side of the breakdown. He's running round, and as he's sort of running around the back of the breakdown, he can see there's 2 or 3 Springbok forwards are basically coming around the corner. He's thinking they're going to get the ball, so he's eyeballing them. And as he comes around the corner, Ryan Ack steps out, and the Kiwi defender's basically looking at the big forwards runner, which is understandable, and Ryan Ack's able to slip past the first defender and almost go inside him, and as he's turned back inside, Ryan Ack has the power to sort of slide through him. So yeah, okay, that try doesn't get scored. Yes, Ryan Ack needs to finish it and shows his power, but without those forward runners come around the corner, you know, threatening the defence, and the defence going, oh Christ, I'm going to get run in too hard here, it doesn't happen. So it's, as you say, it's all those bits and bobs that feed off one another, and Ryan Ack just makes the right decision and carries and scores.
From my experience and being in that position is, all I'm looking for, Coley, if I was attacking you, is if you turn in or your head turns in and looks at me, I just play the big runner outside you. That's who I hit. But if you're fixated on that big runner and you haven't acknowledged me and you're staying square and your head's facing forward, then I'm just going to take you on and your inside shoulder. And that's the cue for any 9s out there. That's what you're looking for. You're picking on the inside shoulder of that defender. You're seeing where his body is. You're seeing where his head movement is. If it's up the field, you know you can take him on inside shoulders. If he's turning in towards you, his head's looking at you, his eyes are making contact, he's going to jam in. That's where you leave it for your big runner, because then it gives him a one-on-one inside shoulder.
So that was a great insight there, Len. Like, I think you look at that game, another incredible game of rugby this summer. You look at that, you look at the Lions' second test, like, we've been treated to some great rugby this summer already. Yeah,
we have. You know, like you say, Lions' second test was a cracking game. You know, Australia-Argentina today was a belter. I really enjoyed the test match between New Zealand and South Africa today. 2 absolute heavyweights of world rugby going at it. I can't wait to see them go at it again next week. USA-Australia, you know, Women's World Cup last week. That was an absolute belter. Ended up being a draw. But we're being treated to some proper rugby at the moment. And it's absolute quality. So, put your comments below. Which game have you enjoyed the most so far this summer? Is any game stand out for you? If you're a Welsh fan, maybe it's the first win against Japan in the summer. Maybe you enjoyed that one the most. Do you like what I did there?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Well played from me.
The Emirates Dubai Sevens takes place between November the 28th and the 30th. And guess what? We're going to be there.
That's right, Collie. For the Love of Rugby is going on our first overseas tour, and we want as many THBs there as possible.
It's more than just a sevens tournament. It's action-packed weekend filled with rugby, music, food, which I'm looking forward to, netball, cricket, and a paddle tournament too.
And a fitness competition, which I may or may not be entering.
We'll be hosting a live podcast. We'll be doing a rugby masterclass. And also, they're going to let us do some commentary then.
Right then, Sheriff, how can the THBs come along and hang out with us then?
Tickets to Dubai Sevens are on sale now. Head to EmiratesDubaiSevens.com for information about travel packages and start planning your trip today.
And we will see all you THBs out there. What a treat we also had, Coley, because Australia won 28-24 against Argentina. They had to do it tough, win it the death. They had a couple of chances. They could have kicked for goal. They decided not to. They tapped, they kicked for the corner, then they tapped, and eventually they pounded the line and they got there. And also, you've got to remember, 12 months ago, Coley, they lost 67-27 to Argentina. So Australian rugby is on the rise, and it's awesome to see. I've been quick to criticise Australia. I don't mind getting into the Aussies. I quite enjoy it. But I tell you what, credit where credit's due. Joe Schmidt and his team and that team of players have done a remarkable job in the sort of last 12 months. And I look at Australian rugby and it's on the up, and that is brilliant for the world game. Absolutely brilliant. Argentina will be disappointed given the lead that they had at half time. but you've got to tip your hats to Australia the way they've come back.
Oh, yeah. Well, so the Aussies are the comeback kings, aren't they? They kind of seem to go behind early doors and then spend the second half battling their way back in and snatch it at the death. Credit to them. They keep fighting, which is it's great for the game, isn't it? So I've always said that a good Australia is great for the game. And you look at today's game, like they've got some great players like Lenny Gutau. Slowly he sort of came to the fore. You saw him score a couple of tries, but one of them was running off at Gutau, and the other is they just use his athletic ability one-on-ones. But yeah, the game today was it was a great game. We saw free-flowing rugby. Both teams, as I said before, like similar to them and the Lions, like they're kind of set up in the same way. They go through lots of phases. They play. They go to the width, and it was a great game just of rugby to sort of watch as a neutral and really enjoy. I thought in Townsville, bit of a strange place. I actually texted Montoya during the week, and I said, how's Townsville? He's like, it's strange. We're not allowed in the water because of the crocodiles and the sharks and all that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, if I'm a hungry shark, I'm going after your ass first if he gets in the water, which he then...
He's going to chomp on Julian Montoya's big fat ass, mate, thinking it's a big... text
me back.
It's a big
seal. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, and I thought, what I really enjoyed, so the game was fantastic. What I really enjoyed, just on a side note, I need to know, like, the cameraman that basically just films the Argentinian crowd. The Argentinian crowd was loving life. There's a load of them in the stadium and buzzing. And I need to know whether that job is he head cameraman or is he like the intern? Who gets that job? You know what I mean? Because you don't watch any rugby, you just watch the crowd. Just a thought. If you know your answers, just send it in a comment down below.
Yeah, and do they just have their back turned? Do they have their back turned to the pitch the whole game and just literally scouting out? Because that was what it seemed like they were doing.
Anyway, I thought that it was great to see rugby. Both teams, fan bases really enjoyed it, and say it was Australia to win at the death. Just keep playing. Big Angus Bell going over. It just keeps the Rugby Championship fizzing, doesn't it?
It does, and it's incredibly competitive this year. I'm loving it. And we get to again watch it all again next week. I know I said that earlier, but it all unfolds again next week. And what impressed, I thought Joseph Ali obviously scored a couple of tries, just powerful, close to the line. But what I was really interested about Australia is sort of when they're in the 22 attack, you sort of had Lenny Gutau sort of sniffing around at almost like a 9 at times, just picking and carrying. And there was a real emphasis, and I haven't really seen teams do this, but there was a real emphasis of a bit like they tried to do against the Lions, Coley, when they were trying to just sort of pound in around the ruck, but they weren't getting as much joy. Well, today they got the joy out of it, and you could see there were sort of extra bodies in around that area, using the centres to carry, using the wingers were popping up, back rowers, and there was a real emphasis of sort of trying to get speedable momentum as close to the ruck and around the ruck as possible. It was quite interesting to see that. Haven't seen a team do it to that effect or put that many bodies in and around the ruck within the 22. That was quite. They got some joy out of that, and I was intrigued. Then also, I've got to say, for those who haven't seen it, have a look at Argentina's second try. It's an absolute belter. The way they move the ball, the way they play, absolute brilliant score. Plenty of ball movement, offloads, and great try in the left-hand corner. But I just think you've got two teams there that are both on the up. They're playing rugby, they're moving the ball well, and I was super impressed. And as we already know in the Rugby Championship, like anyone can beat anyone on their day. And Australia got on the right side of the result today. I thought, as also, Cole, you've got to say, because for listeners, they may not know this, but obviously the World Cup pools are announced at the end of the autumn. So actually results that are currently happening in the Rugby Championship are really important, as it then takes us into the Autumn Nations Cup, that actually at the end of that, depending on where your world rankings are, is going to have a big effect in terms of where you sit in pools when they announce the World Cup pool. So every game at the moment is really important. And Australia, they could have gone for the draw, but I loved how ambitious they were. They went for the corner first, then they got another penalty. And it was almost contrast of the penalties Argentina were giving away, like offsides, hands to the ruck, and all these sort of things. And you contrast that to New Zealand back into the game against Africa, and where Ardie Savea is just really, really patient. Everyone's just making their tackles, doing their job, just waiting for that one opportunity. It's a real different mindset where Argentina almost became so desperate at the end that they gave away. Like it allows sustained pressure, doesn't it? Because you get advantage from one of these tap plays, or you get advantage from a ruck. It's a free shot. You can push it, you can try, and it just kept giving them repeated opportunities. And eventually, Angus Bell powers over. So yeah, impressive win from the Australians. And good to see them on the up. As I said, to think only 12 months ago that was 67-27 to now be 28-24, and the way that they're playing, really enjoyable.
You talk about the World Cup rankings there, the world rankings. I think there needs to be an investigation into some of these, because I look at them and I think, But anyway, I'm sure they're all true. But yes, it does depend on the World Cup, and it's going to be interesting, fascinating these next few games into the Autumn Nation about who plays who and the results, how they go.
Well, we'll be covering all that, Coley, because we love it. And we love debating about what might happen and the repercussions of things and what that can look like. And then suddenly you're 2 years out and you already know your pools and you already know your fixtures and the add-on of that. So, but yeah, every game at the moment, there is serious consequences to it. And the Rugby Championship remains wide open. Good to see James O'Connor. I thought he was an awesome impact, mate. And I tell you what, I've watched him come on. I've watched him pull the strings. He's done some great touches throughout the Rugby Championship. And I'm like, great signing from Leicester, mate. I'm excited to see him back in the Premiership and pulling the strings at Tigers.
I think, the way he gets the ball into the wide channels and can move the ball, he brings definite change to Australia's game. And I think, the games he's played, Australia have won 2 out of 3. So, it's very exciting. And, he's obviously got a lot of work more to do with Australia the next few weeks and possibly into the autumn. But no, it'll be great when he comes to Leicester, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Well, it's great to cover the Rugby Championship. It's great to be back, Coley. We'll officially be back on Monday. We'll tell you about exactly what we've been up to, what's been going on, what we've been doing with our little sabbatical post the Lions, and we're fully back. So please like and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Let us know where you'd rank Ardie Savea in terms of All Black back rowers.
Yeah, let us know that then, and let us know where these games have ranked in your summer so far. Again, we've had Australia South Africa was fantastic, where today's games have been brilliant. You talked about Australia USA at the World Cup games. There've been Lions games. There's been a feast of great games already this summer. So let us know in the comments which one has been your favourite so far.
Awesome. Please like and subscribe, and we will be back on Monday.
For the love of rugby.
If you want to drop us a line, get involved with our socials.
Just search for @LoveOfRugby. And if you've listened to all our episodes and need another podcast, go and find Joe Marler's Things People Do.
See you next time.